This is your daily real estate syndication show. I'm your host, Whitney Sewell. Today, we've packed a number of shows together to give you some highlights. I know you're going to enjoy the show. Thank you for being with us today. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Eddie. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah,
Happy
honored to have you. And I was asking Matt, as I ask every guest before we start, like, what's your superpower? And I love his answer. He says he loves the storms, right? And it's navigating the storms for him and helping others to navigate those storms. So I want to jump into that a little bit because I do believe that there's listeners right now who are navigating storms in their business or maybe other parts of their life. And I believe over the next number of months, there's going to be more storms for more operators potentially, unfortunately. And so I hope this is a very valuable and timely episode for you. And so, Matt, let's jump right into that. But wait a minute, before we do, who is Matt John? Give them a little more about who you are, Matt, and a little bit about your background, and let's dive in.
Sure. Yeah. So my background is actually of a financial nature. For the first, 20 years of my career, I was an accountant. Started obviously as an entry-level accountant, moved up to the controller seat, and was a controller when first brought on board at DLP. My current team, my current employer, my current family, and I made the shift over onto the operations side of the house in an operational capacity when I think, frankly, to your point, I really found out who I was and found out my why, so to speak. I think you used the term superpower. I think I've been able to identify that, and not just my superpower, right? But I mean, kind of walking backwards, really thought about the thing that fills me up the most, the thing that gives me the most joy, the most happiness, the most pride in kind of value delivery. And that's value delivery for others. I think when I can provide a solution, I can provide a service, I can provide something in some capacity that helps alleviate an issue, that fills the void of a need, whether that's for an individual, whether that's for a group. That's the thing that really fills me up. And I've really kind of developed a knack personally over the years for really being able to do that during times of significant distress, during times of the stormiest waters, the stormiest weather. And the great part about that is my family now today in DLP was just such a puzzle piece style fit for me finding this organization, because Don Winter, our founder, CEO, visionary, he's pieced together over the last 2 decades from a number of different resources what's been compiled today to call the Elite Execution System. And it's built to do exactly that. To be leveraged when there are issues, when there are roadblocks, when something needs to be resolved, to be able to move forward expeditiously. And so there was a lot of synergy there between me and my why and DLP, where I call home today.
That's awesome. I appreciate you elaborating. And yeah, we've learned so much from just the way you all operate. And diving in on that and trying to implement those things. And that's where you've helped us a ton. And it's interesting. You start implementing these things and initially it can seem pretty overwhelming, right? You got to see all these things to track or all these things to do. And it takes time, right? It takes some time. And I think even internally, it can be, for a team, it can be overwhelming too when they see all these things coming, right? But looking back now, it's just part of the way we operate now. It's like we don't think about it as much, but I can see how it helps us to, I guess, minimize the rough waters as well. The better we communicate, the more everybody knows what they're responsible for, the more all these things that help us to, if a storm's coming, we can see it faster, right? It's not as foggy, I guess, getting to the storm, right? At least if it's coming, hopefully we see it coming because of the ways that we operate now, hopefully. But let's jump in there a little bit. What are some ways that are some things that kind of help you navigate the storm? One thing you mentioned before we started recording is you enjoying the stormy waters, and maybe you could start there, because that's not the norm either, right? I think that you have to train yourself to think that way, right? Most of us do not enjoy stormy waters. In a reference analogy for our business or our family or whatever personally, right? We want it just to be smooth sailing off into the sunset constantly, right? It's just laying out there with our drink in our hand, right? The cool breeze. That's all we really want it to be. So to say we want it to be stormy is not the norm. And I couldn't agree with you more about why you said this, but I thought you could elaborate there to the listener and help them to think that way.
Absolutely. And just to clarify before we jump in, there's nothing I like more than smooth sailing, blue skies, drink in the hand, light breeze. So it's not that I seek out the storm, but I think I get excited when those big issues come about, when those opportunities to really dive in and fix something that is truly broken or that is truly standing in the way of progress. Because, and I hope everyone can kind of relate to this, but in my experience, when I look back at my times of struggle, when I look back at the toughest moments in my life, personally, professionally, younger, last week, whatever the case may be, the largest amount of growth, the most significant change in me for the better is when I dug my feet in and found a way not to avoid addressing it, not to circumvent it, not to hand it off to someone else, but to say, this is here. There's no path forward without addressing this. I'm going to stop what I'm doing. I'm going to tackle this thing that, frankly, either has been passed on, was kind of the gorilla in the corner of the room, is the elephant that nobody's willing to take the first bite of, whatever analogy that we want to use, but it's been avoided by others. I love that. I love a challenge. I haven't told this story in a while, but so I went to Westchester University, was where I got my degree from in Pennsylvania. And it's funny, I had a significant interest all throughout high school, and frankly, all throughout my younger years in psychology. Just love the idea of how the human brain works, and then specifically being able to help people through that understanding. And my dad, part of me said, hey, listen, if you don't want to be an author, it's very difficult to pursue that course. He goes, I've never seen you sitting down in your room and keeping a journal or authoring a paper that you were just couldn't be pulled away from. And so he said, hey, listen, I want you to go and I want you to talk to the Dean of Accounting as well. We'll talk to the Dean of Accounting, we'll talk to the Dean of Finance. And I remember so vividly the Dean of Accounting at Westchester, and I believe that they still hold this distinction, but they're very proud to say that the only school in the state that had a higher pass rate on the CPA exam was the University of Penn, was the Ivy League school that's in Pennsylvania. And he basically spoke to everyone that came into his office to talk about this program, that like this wasn't for everyone. This was very difficult. It was very rigorous. It was going to demand a significant amount of my time. When I saw friends going out to parties or going out to bars or spending weekends visiting other friends at other colleges, I needed to be prepared, as did anyone who was in the accounting platform or curriculum needed to be prepared to spend those weekends in the library studying. And then he looked across the table at me and he said, there's nothing about the conversation that I've had with you today that would indicate to me that's the kind of commitment that you're ready to make for accounting. And so I would suggest to you that this is not the right course for you. This is not the right curriculum for you. I don't believe that you should pursue this degree at this university. no surefire way, no more surefire way than to get me to commit, than to tell me that I can't do something, or tell me something is difficult, or tell me that so many people try and fail, can't succeed. So anyway, I graduated Westchester University with a degree not only in accounting but in finance as a double major. And so that's really, I think that story really kind of encapsulates for me just the type of attitude that I pour into that. But again, I look back at that event, he was spot on. It took every ounce of energy that he said it would take to do as well as I did in that curriculum. And I'm better for pouring myself into that. I'm better for navigating towards the storm as opposed to away from the storm, trying to outrun it. Face the storm, right? Is it Ryan Halliday, right? The obstacle is the way. There's so many books and so many brilliant people continue to kind of reiterate that. I had to try it for myself, and it's spot on in my experience.
It's interesting that I wonder if he said that to everybody that came in to see who would quit, and like either going to make you step up or step down.
I wonder if it was something I said, or maybe it was something I was wearing when I went in to see him. I can't remember, but yeah, it's interesting. I think about the same thing.
Yeah, that's neat. Well, is there maybe even as you are working with numerous entrepreneurs now that are in, say, the elite program or whatever, maybe an example where you could see a storm coming and how you help them navigate it, or maybe how they should have, obviously it's all anonymous, but maybe how, because of the systems that like DLP has helped put in place, that maybe it helped them navigate the storm that would have been a worse storm otherwise.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I don't think you need to go further than the figurehead or the staple, right? The rock that the Church of EES, right, of the Elite Execution System is built on. It's the compass. This is something that helps to dimension not just for the business owner, but for the entire team underneath that business owner. Why are we doing what we're doing? What purpose do we have for pursuing this real estate entrepreneurial venture? And we're all for-profit businesses. Everyone's certainly looking to be profitable, looking to be in the black at the end of the day and not the red. And that's not really the why, and that's not really the purpose that I think that really can be built on, like that rock, like that cornerstone. A why has to be something more significant than that. A why needs to be something that, frankly, the best whys that I have ever encountered are when you truly take a step back and look at them, they're not achievable. And what I mean by that is it's a goal that's set that may never be reached, but the fire to achieve them will continue to burn. The fire to achieve those goals will always ignite passion in the business owners. Because the business owners are passionate, they're natural leaders, natural entrepreneurs, natural visionaries. The rest of that team sees that passion and feeds on that passion. It ignites this thing within an organization that allows people not just to march forward together, right, but to bond and to bind, to be marching at the same thing in the same direction. And so that's really at the crux of it. One of the greatest tools that I have seen is where that compass is really dialed in, and it is the focal point of an organization. It's absolute. It's a borderline steroid, just as far as growth and the gains that you see as an organization. It's borderline narcotic. And then everything else flows down from that, right? There shouldn't be anyone at any level of entrepreneurship who has not experienced having multiple priorities to try and manage at any given time, right? You start off with an entrepreneurial business and all of a sudden you're doing marketing, you're doing sales, you're doing capital raise, you're doing acquisitions. It's a host of different responsibilities that end up being owned by a host of different individuals. It's almost like for the first 1 to 5 years, depending on what that growth pattern is of the organization, just don't even bother with titles, right? Because your title is everything. Your title is the need, right? But rocks, Gino Wickman concept, and I don't know if he's the originator, he took it from somewhere, but it's something that DLP has also adopted. And the idea of these tools, these rocks, is amidst all of the different responsibilities, all of the different competing initiatives, we identify that down and slim that down to only 3, that above all else, if everything else slides, if everything else is pushed to the side, if everything else is backburnered, these 3 priorities are the most critical priorities to be accomplished over the course of the next 90 days, over the course of the next quarter. And it helps from a prioritization standpoint in saying, listen, I have 50 things that need to get accomplished, but I know because I took the time before this quarter to sit down and really consider of all these initiatives, all these different directions, all these things I could charge after, what are the 3 that are going to give me and the organization the highest level of return, get us closer to the goal that we're trying to reach, produce the most level of ramp up, of ratchet up, right? The thing that's going to be the highest octane fuel in the tank if we're able to achieve them, and then let nothing whatsoever come between you and achieving those goals over the course of that quarter. That's really, I think that's rocks or that next thing that really, once that compass is dialed in right, better than anybody. It is a detailed process dialing everything on that compass in. But once it's there and the vision is set, the goal is set, the brand is set, the customers are set, the products that you're offering are set, you start to dial in kind of the day to day, the week to week, the month to month, your meeting cadence. What is it that we need to all get on the same page on? What do we need to meet weekly on? What do we need to meet monthly on? And then it's rocks. It's about what are the priorities of every individual on the team that they will not be distracted from, that they will above all else achieve. So those are really things that I think have helped to navigate the storm, because those competing priorities, that is the storm, right? Or another word for that is the whirlwind. That is the chaos that we all face day in and day out. Is some rise early and some work late. And I think part of the reason for that, part of the idea for that is if I rise early, I can beat the text messages, the phone calls, the emails, the chats, everything else that start coming your way the moment that the rest of the world engages. And rocks and the compass and frankly, all of the elite execution system, one of the many things they help do is again, navigate those storms, navigate those rough waters.
I want to jump in to us talking about you've helped and working with numerous organizations, right? And you see, it's interesting. I think you probably learn a lot by seeing different types of leadership, different types of organizations, different team members that everybody's having to deal with at DLP, but then also across the elite members that you're helping and are serving as well. I think it's a unique seat that you get to be in to learn as well. Right? I mean, like you just see all these different things. But I bet across numerous organizations, you see some that are just handle the storm, let's say, reference to yesterday's show, differently, right? Or maybe they're more prepared for that storm or whatever, but they probably have some kind of competitive advantage in some way, right? Or they have different team members who have different skill sets or whatnot. But I'd love to dive into that a little bit and maybe you be able to elaborate on why some have an advantage over others or competitive advantage, or maybe it's from team members, or maybe it's from leadership, or maybe it's whatever you see there, and help us all to raise that bar, right? And or be prepared for those things that aren't an advantage or not an advantage for us because of maybe issues that we don't even see yet, but where you've seen that in other organizations.
Sure. I think the two biggest competitive advantages, if I look across all the organizations that I've had the pleasure to work with, and all the leaders that I've had the pleasure to speak with, the most successful organizations have found a way to, number one is simplify. And then the second thing would be surrounding themselves, specifically related to the entrepreneur, surrounding themselves with dynamic individuals to be able to assist in the growth strategy of the organization. So and I'll kind of go into both of those. So from a simplification standpoint, I think at the onset of being an entrepreneur, at the onset of starting a business, I think that a lot of folks look at it as that I've got to focus in this area. I have to be exceptional at acquisition. And then the moment that you have something acquired, okay, well, I'll outsource the brokerage aspect of things. I'll find somebody who can bring deals to me. I can potentially even outsource the underwriting of it. I can potentially outsource the asset management. I can outsource the property management, construction management. If it's a job that has significant ramp up, there's a number of different things, and I'll just be here. But as you grow, you recognize how much of the piece of the pie that you are giving away by not doing that in-house, right? And so, okay, well, let me go find somebody that can broker these deals, right? Let me go find a hunter to bring these deals in. I don't need to syndicate across this third party. I'll bring someone in to market these deals and raise capital internally, right? I'll bring somebody into asset management. I'll do property management in-house. I'll be my own GC as well, right? And all of a sudden, you've got 3, 5, 8 different verticals within the organization, all of which are doing a decent job, but none of which are what I would call world-class, or what DLP, Don, consistently references as being the best in the world at, right? And the concept there is, what aspect of this real estate business that you have built do you believe that you are either on track to be, or currently can be considered the best in the world at doing, right? And the idea there is direct focus to start. All of a sudden, I'm bringing in all of these additional resources because doing it in-house is frankly, is cheaper, right? It can be better for the bottom line, but then the focus is in all of these different directions, right? And that same thing happens from a real estate standpoint. Maybe you start with a single family renovation, right? And you renovate it and you sell it, and you go, okay, well, that was great. Let me try that again. And then maybe you're not getting the same return on that. And you go, well, I don't want to sell it. Maybe I'll refinance it. Now I'll rent it. And maybe you get 3 or 4 or 5 of those, right? You go, okay, well, you know what? There's a piece of land over there that would be phenomenal for a home. I just need to know how to build, right? So let me learn how to build, and I'll go build it. And now you're building ground up. So why would I do that with single families? Let me go do that with a 4-unit or a duplex or an 8-unit or a 10-unit. And now you're doing single family BRRRR method. You're doing single family ground up construction, scattered lots. You're doing permitting, zoning, and titling. You're doing small multifamilies. You're doing duplexes and quads, and it's all over the map. Right? Again, simplify, focus. What do you believe that you can be the best in the world at doing? Right? And so it's from which verticals do you believe that you can be the best at doing, and which are you going to develop strategic, concrete relationships with third-party vendors that are able not only to do the job at the service levels that your organization wants to be able to achieve those jobs at, but also be able to do that at a price point that makes a lot of sense for you based on your growth path, your growth pattern, your trajectory. But then also making sure to select the specific type of real estate venture that you're most passionate about, that you believe can really deliver on what your values are, your why is, the purpose and the mission of your business and your organization, and really focusing in and zoning in on that, right? So from a simplification model, really dialing in what will be the laser focus of the organization, I think is a really critical strategy as far as having that competitive edge, not at the onset of building a real estate organization, but once you've experienced a certain level of success. And then the second thing I referenced is But any entrepreneur that I've ever been around believes in at different levels of certainty, right? That they are the best person for the job. And the problem becomes is when all of those jobs start to mount as a growing organization, they're stretched too thin, right? And it's no different than what we just talked about from a simplification standpoint. When everything is the focus, nothing is the focus. You're not really being the best in the world at something. And so it gets to the point where an organization has experienced a certain level of growth. An organization needs an experienced, tried and true, track record dialed in professional in a certain area, but that's not enough. They have to align with your values as an entrepreneur, which will inevitably bleed into the values of the organization. Those two things are the most critical things in my experience to bringing on exceptional leaders to help fortify the organization and help give you back as the entrepreneur some of your time to do the thing that you're best in the world at, whatever that may be. It's really about simplification, both from a strategy standpoint, as well as a priority management standpoint, by dialing in what the business is going to be the best in the world at and focusing very directly on that, as well as bringing in leaders to the organization who have the ability to truly own the different verticals and the different responsibilities across the highest priorities of the organization.
One thing I wanted to ask you before we have to move to a few final questions pretty quickly, but I wanted to ask you your maybe a tip on nurturing then those leaders from within the organization. Maybe just a couple thoughts on that. I know we don't have a ton of time we could do numerous shows probably on this one topic, but once we have somebody that we found that leader, like you were just talking about, they're on board, just like nurturing their growth, right? Encouraging their growth. Maybe a couple tips on being able to do that. I feel like it's something we've had to grow in our leadership anyway. At LifeBridge, it's like, okay, now we've built this team of amazing people. How do I ensure that they're growing, right? And that me as their leader, I know where they're weakest, right? Or I'm able to help them individually, right? It can become a lot to keep up with, right? As I'm trying to help everybody in some way, or having that one-on-one relationship with all of them and keeping the culture piece there and all that. Speak to that nurturing a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think I'll go back to the elite execution system from Don's book, Building a Lead Organization, which we talked about a little bit yesterday. There are a couple of just absolutely critical ways and massively helpful ways within the book, within the framework of the elite execution system that can assist, one of which is huddles, right? And huddles can be daily huddles with teams. Huddles can be what we call alignment huddles. But basically, they're a way for you to connect with team members through a framework. It's a design framework. And again, whether that's in a team setting or an organizational, a one-on-one setting, really build that bond, build that relationship, build that trust and that comfort and that family atmosphere, that family unit, right, that binds through those huddles. And really, it's a regular cadence, doesn't have to be more than 15 to 30 minutes. And just touch on things outside of business priorities. How is your family doing, right? How are, because it's graduation time, right? Like, is anybody excited about moving on to next year, right? Anybody already got their reading list dialed in from the kids, right? Are you taking any vacations over the summertime? Where are you going? What are you doing? Really just getting those additional pieces of, I hate to call it kind of information, but it's different. It's a different level of relationship when you start talking about things that aren't production and aren't business centric and aren't really just directly dialed into to that area of focus. The other thing that we do is that it rocks. So you talk about growth and you talk about pushing leaders and promoting leaders to that next step. you should be engaging those team members with what are they producing. And I don't believe we talked about this one, I think it was yesterday. So rocks are 90-day top priorities, right, that are owned by one individual. DLP, we do 3 professional. We also do 3 personal. Certainly different levels of how many are organizationally specific, right? But when we talk about those professional rocks, you should be having that conversation with those leaders, right? Okay, this one, clearly your responsibility right now fits right into your role. That makes perfect sense. It's absolutely a priority. I agree with that one, right? This one needs to be a little bit more specific. There's a framework that rocks work into, right? It's an acronym called SMART: specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. But let's say that third one isn't quite that dialed in. Well, what are you passionate about, right? What's the next level of growth for you? Maybe you're working in this lane right now. What's a lane that you would want to take on maybe some additional responsibility? So what's a role that you would want to grow into, right? If there's not an obvious trajectory for that path for that team member. And let's build a goal for you over the course of the next quarter to develop in that capacity, whether that's a production-based goal, whether that's a project assignment, whether it's an educational goal, right? We're going to go get certified in this, or take a 6-credit course at a community college or a local tech school, whatever the case may be. I think both of those are really great opportunities to huddle from developing that relationship further. And then the rock for it. Let's set a reach goal for you along the lines of the thing that you're excited about growing into and achieving.
But grateful for your time this morning or today, just being willing to share with the listeners and myself. Very grateful for your time. And so tell the listeners again how they can get in touch with you if they have questions for you.
You bet. Happy to assist or expand on anything we touched on today. My email address is Matt, MAT.John, JOHN, just like the first name, at DLPcapital.com. It'd be a pleasure to talk to any of them. But frankly, Whitney, I just want to say thank you. Always a pleasure talking to you. It was an honor for me to come on here, and I hope I provided value not just to you, but to your listeners. So thank you very much. Appreciate you.
Thank you for being with us again today. I hope that you have learned a lot from the show. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I hope you're telling your friends about the Real Estate Syndication Show and how they can also build wealth in real estate. You can also go to lifebridgecapital.com and start investing today.